Senator John McCain's casket as he lies in state at the Capitol Rotunda tonight. You watched today as we saw that ceremony play out, and not far from there at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Site, they are going to hold a candlelight remembrance as brothers in arms gather this evening ahead of tomorrow morning's service at Washington's National Cathedral. 15 pallbearers chosen by the senator himself. Among them, anti-Putin activist Vladimir Kara-Murza, who sat down with me exclusively to talk about his role in tomorrow's service and how he and the senator bonded. Tell me a little bit about the origins of your friendship with Senator McCain.
Well, we first met, the three of us, Boris Nemtsov, the Russian opposition leader, Senator McCain, and myself. This was at the beginning of 2010, in that building just behind us in a Russell Senate building where Senator McCain's office was. And this meeting was about the Magnitsky legislation, which was a bill then introduced in the U.S. Senate, and Senator McCain was one of the main driving forces behind that bill. And what that bill proposed to do was to impose individual, personal, targeted sanctions, not against Russia as a country, but against corrupt officials and human rights abusers in Vladimir Putin's regime. And what that bill proposed to do was to end the impunity, whereby the same people who have for years been attacking and undermining and violating the most basic norms of democracy in our country, in Russia, would then come to the West and enjoy the privileges and the opportunities that democracy offered in the West, you know, where they would school their children, open their bank accounts, buy their real estate, and so on and so forth. And the Magnitsky legislation put a stop to that, and it was finally passed by Congress and signed into law in 2012.
Very powerful and very unliked by the Putin enclave.
It's the thing they hate most.
Talk to me a little bit about him asking you to be, you'll be one of the pallbearers for the National Cathedral memorial service. Tell me about, how did he ask you to do that?
He passed me the message in April through a mutual friend, and I can tell you that it's the most heartbreaking honor one can think of. But it will be a very important opportunity for me to say one last goodbye to somebody who's been a pillar of strength and support over so many years. And there are so many political leaders in Western countries, including here in the U.S., who like to pay lip service to such things as human rights. They like to talk about the importance of political freedom, of human dignity, do this grandstanding. And Senator McCain didn't just speak about those values. He lived those values. He believed in those values. He stood up for those values. And with him, the words and the deeds were always the same. And unlike so many others who subscribe to this notion of realpolitik, who are prepared to cut cynical deals with authoritarian and kleptocratic regimes, Senator McCain never did that. For him to do this would be to go against everything he believed in. And so he was one of those political leaders who were the earliest to speak the truth about the Putin dictatorship and the Putin authoritarianism and the Putin kleptocracy. The first time that he publicly sounded a warning about Putin's coming authoritarianism was in February of 2000 during a Republican presidential primary debate in South Carolina.
I'm very concerned about Mr. Putin. I'm afraid Mr. Putin might be one of those who wants to make the trains run on time.
This was the time, as you recall, when most of Western leaders were still praising this new young official who just came into the Kremlin, who spoke fluent German, who would supposedly, ensure the stability after the erratic Yeltsin years and so on and so forth. John McCain said Putin is somebody who would want to make the trains run on time. That's a historical allusion to the Mussolini regime in Italy. Then in 2008, he sounded a public warning about Putin's coming aggressive designs on the world stage, and he proved to be right again. And one of the biggest lies that has been propagated by the Kremlin media, by Russian state-run media, was that Senator John McCain was somehow an enemy of Russia. Nothing could be further from the truth. Senator McCain certainly was an enemy of the kleptocrats and the criminals and the crooks who are in and around Vladimir Putin's regime in the Kremlin. There's the people who are robbing the citizens of Russia, who are denying the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Russia. He was certainly an enemy of them, and he called them what they deserve to be called, criminals, liars, murderers, and crooks. But I can tell you, as somebody who's been involved in the pro-democracy movement and the opposition movement in Russia for many years, we had no biggest friend and no biggest supporter on Capitol Hill when it came to defending the rights and the freedoms and the dignity of the Russian people than Senator John McCain. And his voice will be missed not only in his native state of Arizona and here in Washington and over the U.S., but it will be missed to the furthest corners of the globe.
Thank you very much, Vladimir Kara-Murza. Good to meet you tonight. Thank you for being here.